Hey everybody, it's Chris Dortch welcoming you again to the CFF 2022 live stream. If you're tuning in for this event right now, I love you because you're taking part in a very sacred now CFF tradition of the last several years, and a tradition that is I think going to continue well into the future, at least as long as Clay Chapman continues to return my emails. What you're about to see is something I think truly amazing, and it's something that I think everyone needs a little dose of in their life. And if you ever get a chance to see Clay Chapman, the presenter of our next event, the Pumpkin Pie Show, do this live, I very much encourage you to have that situation happen in your life as well, because it is some of the most confrontational and insane live storytelling I've personally ever seen. And when we brought Clay in to do the Pumpkin Pie Show a few years ago, it was the first thing I could do to buy every book that the man had ever written, track down everything that he's ever done, and everything this man has written is just amazing. I truly think he's one of our great storytellers, and it's amazing to have him come back year after year and do this for us. This year's Pumpkin Pie Show edition that he's created is tapped very deeply into his book, The Remaking, which is a book I cannot recommend to you enough. Those of you who follow this festival, I think we have a lot of the same fiction in common. So if, like me, you're a lover of Grady Hendrix, if you're a lover of Cargill, this is another voice that if Clay is unfamiliar to you, once you watch this event, you're going to immediately go to your local bookstore. I hope your local bookstore, don't give Bezos your money, and order all this guy's books. It's a huge honor to have Clay McCleod Chapman back with us for the Pumpkin Pie Show, The Remaking.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming out today. My name is Clay, and I am here today to tell you a little story. And it actually comes from a book I wrote a couple years back called The Remaking. And all you need to know about The Remaking is that it is a ghost story that gets told and retold every 20-ish years. But the beginning of the story is a personal favorite of mine. And, you know, when this book came out in like 2019, I had high hopes on bringing it to Chattanooga in 2020, but fate had other ideas in mind. So I'm glad I get to at least bring it to you today, virtually. So without further ado, this is The Remaking. These woods whisper, the pines at your back, you can nearly feel the needles bristling in the wind, right? Lean in and listen closely, and you'll hear their stories. Everything that's ever happened underneath that vast canopy of conifers, every last romantic tryst, the suicides, the lynchings, you name it. These trees will testify to them. These woods have witnessed them all. Whenever somebody in town wants to do something in secret, they'll come out here where they think they're alone, where nobody's watching, right? They'll hide beneath these branches, you know, performing their little rituals as if they believe these trees will keep their secrets for them. They think that nobody's listening in, but that's simply not true. I mean, that's not true at all. The trees are listening, always listening. The woods know what the people of Pilot's Creek have all done, what we've all done. I've lived in this godforsaken town my whole goddamn life. I know just about every secret there is to know about the people here, every last little secret. You know how? I listen. Now I listen to what these trees have to say. I listen to these woods. So, what story do you want to hear, huh? You want to know what it was that drove Hallie Tompkins to hang herself back in 38? Or which men it was who strung Russell Parr up? Or how about that baby they found half buried back in 38? Yeah? No. You're not here for any of those stories, are you? You want to hear about Jessica, don't you? Of course you do. Tonight of all nights, 20 years ago to the day, October 16th, 1931. Oh, we don't have much time. I mean, here it is, almost midnight, and I haven't even begun to tell the tale of the little witch girl of Pilot's Creek. Poor Jessica. You bring me a bottle? No. Don't be too stingy on me now. That is my price of admission. You want to hear a story? You goddamn well have better brought me an offering, alms for the minstrel, something to wet my whistle so that I'll sing. Because Jessica's story takes time, takes the life right out of me. Her story takes its toll on the teller. You hear that price is too high, unless you got a little something for me to drink, just take the edge off, just warm my insides. I mean, it gets so cold out here at night. Thank you. Oh, thank you kindly. That is much better. Feel that fire work its way down my throat, settle into my belly like a bonfire. Now, where were we? Oh, yes. Let's start with Jessica's mother. Ella Louise Ford was born back in 1912, right here in Pilot's Creek. She'd come from good stock. Her family owned their fair share of acreage growing tobacco or something. But there was something always off about that girl. I mean, her parents sensed it from the get-go. None of that sugar and spice and everything nice for Ella Louise. No, that girl was touched. It was said that Ella Louise could talk to possums. She kept honeybees underneath her bed, in mason jars, and she made charms out of dried tobacco leaves. She couldn't be bothered with all those dolls like all the other girls her age. Not the frilly kind with rose painted cheeks and pigtails. No. Ella Louise made her own dolls. I mean, if you could even call them dolls. I mean, they looked more like totems, huh? Like effigies twined together in twigs and wheat, little insects in their chests, little beetle hearts, right? Try as they might, Mr. and Mrs. Ford could not break Ella Louise out of her strangeness streak. She never mingled with all the other children her age. I mean, none of them trusted her, Mother Ford took this all too personally, as if their rejection of Ella Louise was an affront on the family name. Because you got to understand now, back then, town as small as Pilot's Creek was just crippled with superstitions. Words hold power around these parts. And well, once word got around about Ella Louise's peculiar habits, it wasn't long before business for the Fords began to take a turn. Nobody wanted to be associated with the Fords, be seen fraternizing with her family or paying them a visit at her home. Anyone who did just suffered as much of a cold shoulder as they did. Because you got to understand now, all anyone had around these parts was their reputation. Simply to be seen in the midst of the Fords was enough to bankrupt businesses, ruin entire legacies. I mean, you couldn't wash the stink of that family once it clung to your skin. No, that family was cursed. Mother Ford took to punishing her only daughter, bend Ella Louise over her knee and tried just like spanking the darkness out of her, took a switch to the insides of her thighs until her legs bred anything that might exercise this witchery brewing within her. Huh? There it was. That word at long last, witch. It got whispered amongst all the other mothers, huh? Their children, all through town, in church even. It wasn't long before that gossip grew into a downright din until everybody was talking about it, until it was unavoidable now. Ella Louise Ford was a witch. Her debutante ball was a downright disaster. I mean, Mother Ford moved heaven and earth to make it a night to remember. And, you know, in a way, it was. It truly was. Just maybe not the way that Mother Ford had hoped for, you know. See, Ella Louise had always been a sight to behold. You know, you'd think that she had stepped right out of an oil painting, something you might see hanging up in a museum. Her skin was pale, always pale, with the slightest hint of pink illuminating each cheek, you know. She always had this devilish grin playing across her face, but you never say that she was smiling. No, her lips just curled heavenward, all on their own. And her eyes, oh man, her eyes were this deep green as the deep sea, I reckon, to the depths of which no man has ever ventured or ever will, huh? Oh, what mysteries lie beneath those murky eyes. Only the devil knows, right? Oh, coming out to polite society was always a way of Pilot Creek's upper crust. You know, Mother Ford had done it, and her mother had done it, and on and on and on and on. So you goddamn well better believe that Ella Louise was going to have her turn no matter how much she protested. Mother Ford simply would not hear it. She refused to let the ritual go. For a girl to become a woman, she needed to be presented, to be unveiled. I mean, that was just their God-given rite of passage, right? Ella Louise was meant to wear this beautiful ballroom gown stitched just for her, pink silk. Oh, but at the moment of her coming out, the moment when every debutante is presented to the Pilot Creek's upper echelon, well, Ella Louise stepped out onto the dance floor covered in mud from head to toe. That gown was torn to tatters. All that pink silk just ripped to shreds. You could see her paleness shifting beneath those tatters. You know, she was practically naked in front of the whole town. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Ella Louise stood before them all, that devilish grin playing across her face as if nothing were off about this at all. She asked her father for her first dance as a woman, just as her mother had instructed her to do, right? Well, Mother Ford nearly passed out right there on the dance floor. Ella Louise was cut off from that night on. She was excommunicated from her own family, disinherited. Her mother never uttered her daughter's name ever again, her own flesh and blood. It was as if Ella Louise never existed. So she moved out here into these woods, huh? She made this forest her home. Now, you know, it ain't exactly clear if she built it herself or she had a hand helping her, but a cabin manifested itself seemingly out of the blue. Now these woods are primarily comprised of eastern white pine. You know, they reach up to 100 feet easily. It's just so much lush coverage. It's perfect for building a one-story cabin with a out of stone and mortar. You could see the glow from the fire if you happen to be out there, you know, in the middle of the night, but nothing or no one called these woods home. No, not another living soul. just Ella Louise and Jessica. Now, if I was better at my arithmetic, I might surmise it was the moment of her, Ella Louise's, coming out that also served as Jessica's conception, right? I mean, whatever happened out there in those woods to bring Ella Louise back in such a muddied state, well, 9 months later, right? but then again, I ain't no mathematician, and I sure as hell ain't no baby doctor. Nobody owned up to being Jessica's father, or I mean, would you? Back then, the town as small as Pilot's Creek. Oh, you might as well have laid down with the leper. No. Ella Louise was our town's burden to bear. Pilot Creek's own pariah. Weeks would go by and nobody would see her rummaging around town or hear her voice begging for pocket change or even think about her out there in those woods. But then the sound of a baby crying lifted up from these trees. Oh, Jessica's wailing filled this forest. It echoed all the way into town, into the minds and dreams of just about every last townsperson. Ella Louise had herself a baby now. Other theories of paternity abounded, such as Jessica had no father. She was immaculately conceived by the devil himself, right? Ella Louise had made a pact with the Lord of Flies, and he begot her an only daughter. I mean, her very existence was a morbid reminder of her mother's unholy union with Beelzebub. We'd see the two of them come into town for their groceries, just like everybody else. I mean, you can't live off of root vegetables alone now, can you? But whenever we saw that little girl in her mama's arms, all we saw was the princess of darkness. We'd only see Jessica when she'd come into town, watch her grow in these fits and spurts. Weeks, months would go by. And, oh, there she'd be, brave in the lane, just next to her mama, always holding Ella Louise's hand, always keeping her head down low. She never went to school with the rest of us, never learned about life like the rest of us. Whatever she was learning happened out there in that cabin in the woods. I can only imagine her lesson plan out there, right? The devil's arithmetic. Well, it wasn't until Jessica turned 9 that she started coming into town on her own, right? She always had this list of goods to fetch for her mama. Without Ella Louise by her side anymore, well, a bit of us boys felt a bit more emboldened by our inherited distaste for Jessica. Kids took to throwing stones at her, calling her all kinds of names. I mean, I myself am not too proud to admit that I fetched a pebble or two in my day, throwing them at her. Once, I actually struck her in the shoulder, but my aim was true. Jessica turned to me. Even though I was standing amongst a dozen other boys, all of them holding their own stone, I mean, she knew that I had been the one to throw it, that rock had come from my very hand. She pinched her eyes at me and without even saying a word, her lips moving, I swear I started hearing her voice inside my head as if my own thoughts started bubbling over in my skull. She whispered at me, cursed me. What'd she say? I'll never tell. Unless you got another bottle on you, huh? Well, suffice it to say, her curse worked. I can't stop thinking about her. Not back then, not even now. She left a shadow of herself, an impression on me. Little Jessica never left. Nobody talks about how beautiful she was. I mean, if her mother was a portrait of perfection, I mean, Jessica took my breath away. She was an angel. And yet, for the life of me, I can't I can't remember the color of her eyes or the color of her hair. I can't even remember the features of her face. I mean, words escape me. I can only see her in my dreams. The moment I wake up, the vision of her just dissipates, gone, just like that. As a boy, I was afraid of her, what she might do to me. But that didn't stop me from welcoming her into my head night after night. I wait for her now. I yearn for her to return. Why won't she let me go? Jessica, Louise was touched by magic. Well, then Jessica was downright blessed. Jessica had twice the talent her mother had. Talent. Now, what else the hell are you going to call it, huh? Ella Louise nurtured her daughter's talents. Out there in the woods, nobody was going to stop them, It was said that Jessica could commune with the wildlife. She could mend a bird's broken wing with just a touch of her finger. A simple tap of her fingertip against the soil, and out sprouted a toadstool, a dozen mushrooms. I mean, this is what we all believe, what folks whispered around town. None of us saw this with our own eyes, but we didn't need to because we believed. If any boy was brave enough or dumb enough to set foot in this forest and try sneaking a peek through their windows, they got pink eye for their troubles. If anyone come close to their home, they'd break out in a rash, their skin suddenly scorched in poison ivy. If anyone said an ill word about Jessica within her earshot, they'd suddenly discover an eruption of blisters all over their tongue. I mean, none of this was simply by coincidence. I mean, none of this was by chance. No, we all knew what Jessica was, what her mother was, what those two were doing out there on those woods. But even a witch has got to make a living, right? Everybody struggles. Oh, the demands to make ends meet forced Ella Louise to open up an apothecary shop in her own home. For those folks who wished to forego the traditional medicinal route, well, Ella Louise offered up something a little bit more herbal of the earth, shall we say. This is all a bit hypocritical. I know, but sometimes fate doesn't offer us up the destiny we so believe we richly deserve now, right? You want that boy to fall in love with you? Ella Louise has got a little something for that. You want to get back at your boss for firing you? Well, Ella Louise has got a little something for that too. Is there any sickness in your soul? Is there any unrest in your head? Are you unhappy at your very core? Ella Louise had all kinds of miracle cures. Medicines that had no names, herbs and insects and liquids of various viscosities. Her medicines could do what the doctors in town couldn't. The walls of their cabin were just lined in mason jars, each one holding their own, medicinal specimen. But you just had to be brave enough to come knocking on their door and ask, please, Ella Louise, help me, save me, please. Nobody would openly admit to paying Ella Louise a visit, Nobody would profess to taking one of her cure-alls. You might as well as confess to consorting with the devil, but we all did. I mean, we did. Men, women, mothers, fathers, boys and girls alike. I mean, how couldn't we? Ella Louise never judged. never turned her back on us. She kept her door open for any soul willing enough to come and ask, such as Shauna. Now, Shauna Reynolds had been suffering from severe cramps all through her pregnancy. Yeah, her due date was just around the bend, but that pain become unbearable. Her family doctor did nothing. Whatever he prescribed. she even crossed 2 county lines to visit one of them prenatal specialists, and even they couldn't get to the bottom of what was wrong with her. You see, Shauna and her husband had been trying for years to get pregnant. Years. They prayed and prayed, and still nothing ever seemed to take root. Just when you thought that there wasn't any hope of them ever having a child to call their own, just when you thought that they were going to give up on having a baby, well, it happened. A miracle. But that pain just became unbearable. Everybody could see looking at Shauna, that child was leeching the life right out of her, huh? Rather than plumping up like most mothers do. I mean, she was just only getting, thinner, skeletal. She always needed to take a break after a couple steps. Sit herself down and try catching her breath, but she never caught it. She's always tired, but never able to sleep for more than a few minutes. The more that baby, her tummy just bulged out, the more the rest of her just started getting thinner, skeletal. You can see her ribs raising up from her chest with every breath. Her cheekbones nearly cut through her face. Her eyes sunk to the depths of her skull, and still those cramps were getting worse, crippling her, killing her. You'd run out of hope. If modern medicine had failed you, well, I'd imagine you'd pay Louise a visit too. Shauna walked into these woods alone, on her own, knocked on her door, and asked, "Please, Louise, help me. Save me, please." Well, Louise ground down a few dried roots and leaves with a mortar and pestle, scooped up a spoonful of the stuff and mixed it in with water and told Shauna to drink it all. Whatever it was, it worked. Miracle, right? All that pain just washed away. Shauna was back on her feet again. The color returned to her cheeks, her smile, her happiness had returned. And nobody was the wiser. No one, not even her husband, knew how, because nobody cared. All that mattered was that Shauna had finally turned a corner. A miracle. Well, it wasn't until one night when Shauna woke up, she discovered that the bedspread was all spotted. There was blood all over the blankets, all over her legs. Shauna's husband, Wayne Reynolds, he took her to the doctor's office right there in the middle of the night, carried her the whole way until they were both covered in blood. The baby didn't make it. The doctors believed that the miscarriage had been induced by some sort of a chemical agent. They found traces of toxins that nobody in their right mind would ever ingest, especially if they were pregnant. I mean, had Shauna been taking some kind of exposed to some kind of rare plant lately, like Jerusalem's cherry, water hemlock, rosary pea? Has she eaten anything from the woods lately? Well, Shauna eventually broke down and confessed that she'd been taking a spoonful of Ella Louise's special remedy for weeks now. Maybe a bit more than the prescribed spoonful. Wayne was beside himself with grief. I mean, son or daughter, he'd been prepared to love that child with his whole heart. And they ended up burying themselves a boy. It doesn't take long before grief curdles over into rage now, does it? Oh, Wayne was a proud man, a pillar of society, a man of God. Every Sunday, he'd be the first in line to receive the sacrament. So imagine how crestfallen, how crushed he was when he discovered his own wife had been sneaking off behind his back into the woods to receive some potion that balked at God's own divine providence, that consigned their unbaptized lamb, as he so fervently believed, into eternal hellfire. What would you have done if you'd been in Wayne's shoes, huh? What would any of us have done? No. Wayne wanted retribution. He wanted Ella Louise to pay for what she'd done to his wife, his child, his family that would never be. I mean, who amongst us could have blamed him, huh? You know what I mean? Certainly not the people from our town. Certainly not the people of Pilot's Creek. No, we understood. We all saw his pain, his grief, his rage. We knew what had to be done because this had been a long time coming, right? Imagine that bonfire just waiting for the match, yearning to burn. Now it was lit. It didn't take much convincing on Wayne's part to get his friends all fired up. Huh? We're talking 5 men all total, all pillars of society. Harold Smith, my own mailman. Jeremy Hawthorne, owner of Hawthorne Hardware. Tom Watkins, local dentist. Bill Pendleton, accountant. And Wayne Reynolds. Tonight, 20 years ago to the day those 5 men went beyond the law. Tonight, Wayne Reynolds demanded justice no judge or jury would ever offer his family. Tonight, they were going to burn themselves a witch. Those 5 men circled around their cabin in the middle of the night, just staring through their windows. Watching Ella Louise and Jessica go about their business none the wiser. Jessica probably reading to herself while Ella Louise stitched herself a dress. Something pretty. I imagine humming the whole time. The plan had been to smoke them out. Wayne Reynolds tosses a bottle filled with diesel through one window, and Jeremy Hawthorne tosses in another. The flames spread across the pine wood floor. All that glass, all those mason jars, they all started to sparkle. Over 100 stars coming together to form some unholy constellation. And those men waited. How long do you think those 2 hid inside, huh? A lot longer than you might imagine. I bet you they knew what was waiting for them outside, but the air grew thick, dense with smoke, and started to choke. You could hear them coughing uncontrollably as all that glass, all those jars, they started melting, bursting, going up in flames. Ella Louise finally busts through the front door, clutching little Jessica to her chest. Wayne Reynolds, Bill Pendleton, each grabbed Ella Louise by the arm and starts trying to struggle, wrestle herself free. And Jessica falls to the ground. Ella Louise howls at her to run. So Jessica just picks herself up and runs for the trees. She didn't make it very far. No, Wayne Reynolds grabs her by the hair and yanks her back, sending her to the ground. Oh, Ella Louise lets out this howl as that man just scoops her daughter up into his own arms. Well, Jessica's feet kicking through the air, but it was hopeless, pointless. Little Jessica couldn't wrestle herself free. Tom Watkins was pretty good with an axe. So, in a matter of a couple swings to a sapling, they had themselves a ready-made stake to tie Ella Louise to. They heaped the branches from that sapling at Ella Louise's feet. Wet wood burns slowly, very, 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 very slowly. Little Jessica, she's just screaming for her mother as Ella Louise just pleads for her daughter's life. Do what they must to her, but please let Jessica go. Jessica's just wrestling in Wayne's grip, so he ends up handing her off to Bill Pendleton. And Wayne pulls out this box of wooden matches from his pocket, brings it right up to Ella Louise's ear, starts shaking it. And all those wooden matches rattling around inside. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Lighting her feet on fire most certainly assured a slow burn. Takes a while for those flames to level with your head. Every mounting inch, every lick and flicker is just another invitation to shriek, to plead for mercy, to beg. They made Jessica watch the fire rise up her mother. Watch the flames consume her body until she was eclipsed in a sheet of orange and yellow. Jessica's screams subsided into this wet sound. There's no shape or contours to it at all. It's just nothing but grief. Jessica finally pulls herself free from Bill Pendleton's grip and just runs right up to her mother, embraces her in the flames. Bill tries to grab her, drag her back, but that girl just wouldn't let go. The two of them ended up burning together. Imagine what that must have felt like. Imagine the flames at your feet, the fire climbing up your legs, your knees, your thighs. Think about the smoke in your lungs. Think about your hair on fire. The smell of it, just unavoidable now. Sulfur, scorched and organic. Those tresses went up so fastly, as fragile as a bird's nest on fire. You ever smelled flesh on fire? I have. We all did that night. Anyone within miles of Pilot's Creek, I heard them scream from miles away in the safety of my home under the blankets of my own bed. I swear I heard Ella Louise and Jessica Ford screaming together, mother and daughter, October 16th, 1931, 4 minutes after midnight. At dawn, the sun rose up to nothing but ash. The ribs on one skeleton were much smaller than the other. The two charred chest cavities holding on to one another like some desperate attempt to cling to one another. Hold on. They ended up burying Ella Louise out there in the woods somewhere. No gravestone, no marker of any kind. Wherever she's buried, though, those men took that location to their own graves. Jessica was different. They were afraid of her. What she might do to them, that she might rise up from the grave and avenge them for their death. So what those men do? Hmm? Oh, come on, you know this part. Everybody in town does. They ended up burying Jessica in a steel reinforced coffin. And they buried her in consecrated ground with God. They protected themselves the only way they knew how. They buried her right there in Pilot Creek Cemetery amongst the rest of the dead from our town. And then after they lowered her in the ground, they filled it up with concrete, 3 bags worth. Then they poured gravel over her hardened sepulcher. But those boys didn't stop there, did they? No. They erected themselves a metal fence out of interconnecting crosses, over 100 crucifixes wrapping around her grave to keep Jessica in the ground, to contain the little witch girl of Pilot's Creek. No, her grave is just about the only thing left of this story right now. You know, their cabin burned down years ago. Nobody knows where it is now, but you see this little patch of ground we're on right now? No trees grow on it. No grass grows on it. Nothing grows on this little patch of blackened soil. I reckon that this is where Jessica and Ella Louise breathed their last, where their bodies burned, right? You ever hear about that fungus that killed upwards to 1,600,000 trees back in 35? You know, the whole forest was nothing but dead chestnuts as far as the eye could see, nothing but gnarled skeletons in every direction. The wood wasn't even good enough for lumber. It was just rotten all the way through. What do you think could have caused that, huh? That wasn't some fungus. That was Ella Louise. Yeah, her body's still out here somewhere, you know, buried in the ground, you know. Her blood made the earth sick. Started breaking down into the ground until all those trees just started sucking her up and choked. It took 10 whole years for this forest to replenish itself. Another 5 for anything to grow. But you'll never find anything growing on this little patch of ground right here where we're sitting. Oh, if you ask me, those 2 ain't done with us yet. Not our town. Because you could chalk it up to fate, but everybody knows about Harold Smith's car wreck. How, you know, Jeremy Hawthorne died in a freak accident restocking his shop late one night. How they found Tom Watkins asphyxiated on his own laughing gas. You know, sitting in his dentist chair, his pants pooled up at his ankles. How Bill Pendleton's body was just riddled with all kinds of cancer. Every cell just burnt to a crisp. And Wayne? Well, everybody knows Wayne Reynolds took his life not long after what he and his friends had done. Brought a double-barreled shotgun up to his mouth, you know, wrapping his lips around the muzzle. Now, it ain't exactly clear, but folks around here like to imagine that the last word Wayne uttered wasn't a word at all, but a name. Jessica. I hear her voice. In my dreams. I always hear her asking me for help, begging to save her mother. Make it stop. Make the flames stop. But we didn't do a goddamn thing now, did we? We all let them burn out there, the whole town. I visited Jessica's grave once. This was years ago, back when I was a kid. It was the dumbest goddamn decision I ever made in my whole goddamn life. But what you got to understand now, what you got to believe me when I tell you is that I've been hearing her voice all through my head for years now. I just needed to go once, you know, just to know, just to see if I was actually hearing her, if I wasn't going out of my goddamn mind. So in the middle of the night, I snuck out of my house and slipped off into the cemetery. I hadn't even realized what time it was, but when the clock struck 4 minutes after midnight, there she was, Jessica. God, she was waltzing along her grave. And she wandered as far as that crucifix fence would allow, never stepping over it. God, she was wearing this beautiful dress, blinding white, fresh cotton. The hem of it ringed in a little just circle of ash. And when she saw me, she most certainly did see me. She smiled. God, everything within my body just went cold. And she reached her hand out to me. Help me, she said. So I took a step forward, held out my own hand. Help me. There couldn't have been more than a few inches between our fingertips. Help me. I couldn't move. Everything within my body locked. Nothing in me could take another step forward, no matter how loud her voice grew in my head. Help me. So I took a step back. Oh, that is when her grin withered. And then I saw her for what she really was, what she'd become out there in the ground. Those blackened bones, those singed lips, mossy teeth. They say that until she and her mother are reunited, Jessica's soul will not rest. And she's just waiting for someone to take her hand, let her free. Do you hear that? Oh, like clockwork. You can nearly set your watch to it, right? It was at this moment, 20 years ago to the day, that Jessica and Ella Louise Ford breathed their last. God, can you feel it? The pines bending in the breeze. You can nearly feel the needles piercing the back of your neck. Those branches will grab you, drag you back into the woods. You'll become a story too. Yeah. We all become ghost stories one day, but a good ghost story gets told and retold. Because it's in the telling of the tale that it takes on a life of its own. A ghost story grows. It exists on the breath of those who tell it and tell it. This story's going to live long beyond me and you. It's going to live long beyond this whole town as long as there's someone around to tell it and tell it and tell it. You hear that? I did my part. Just like I was supposed to, like I've always done. I'm getting so tired. I can't keep doing this year after year. Just let me go. I know you can hear me. Are you listening, Jessica? We were wrong. We were so wrong. Please forgive us. Let me go. She's your story now. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Remaking. Thank you very much for coming out today. If you're looking for something spooky to read, there are 3 more stories in here that tell the tale of the little witch girl of Pilot's Creek. You can pick this book up at your local bookstore. It's definitely very orderable. It's virtual, digital, audioable. Take your pick, and it's also out in paperback. But yeah, I gotta say, it's always fun to be with you, Chattanooga. I miss you. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're staying safe out there. Let's do it again next year, okay? Thanks very much, and have a wonderful, safe weekend.